name's Judy McLeod, and I'll be your moderator for the evening. Special welcome to our councillor candidates. I'm going to get this mic fixed. Not being short of help right here. So welcome to Tim Balasiuk, Allan Bisback, Wendy Cheropita, and Adriana Vizzari. Councillor Allan, who was originally scheduled for tonight, has since declined the invitation to participate, so we'll have 4 candidates. But first, before we get started, I need your indulgence to cover a few housekeeping matters. The first, if I could ask you to turn the sound off on your cell phones if you have them on. It's just that we're taping this for YouTube, and it's better if we're not having phones ringing. In the case of an unfortunate need to evacuate the room, you should know that the exit is here. Secondly, we need to be out of the room by 9. Thirdly, the Legion has provided us with a very favorable rental rate, and we encourage you at the end of the session, if you could just donate a loonie or a toonie to the Legion in recognition of their civic contribution. There will be a couple of baskets at the back. After we adjourn, there'll be an opportunity to meet your candidates. I hope you'll take that opportunity. As we can't live stream from the Legion, we are recording these sessions. Betty Ann here is our camera girl, and she will be uploading this to YouTube tomorrow afternoon. They'll be on YouTube and then uploaded to the Focus Notl Facebook page, as well as other Facebook group pages for you to see or to encourage others who couldn't be here tonight. If you know anyone that couldn't come, please let them know that they can still catch the information. And lastly, your feedback is appreciated and it is important. So you can send your comments to notlelection2022@cogeco.ca. There are cards beside the donation baskets with this email on it, and we appreciate your feedback. And now, let's get on to why you're here and what you've come to see. Some newspaper articles have referred to this meet and greet as a debate. I just want to be clear, it's not a debate. There will be no direct interaction between the candidates. All presentations and answers are taken at face value and will be unchallenged by other candidates. There'll be no rebuttals, so it'll be up to you, the listener, to analyze the differences and then decide who you're going to vote for. If you were in any of the meet and greet sessions 4 years ago, you'll notice a few changes this time. All candidates for each position have been invited. We couldn't do that 4 years ago due to the sheer number of candidates and the cost consideration. But this time, with 20 candidates running in 3 categories, we can accommodate everyone. Questions submitted by residents will once again be presented. These questions will form 4 of the 5 questions we're asking tonight. In our community, as you know, there's many high-profile issues, things like municipal accommodation tax, development and developer lawsuits, tax increases, migration to a ward system, and of course tourism and all the associated impacts on traffic, parking, overcrowding, and so forth, and cost. We specifically invited the media to submit their questions. The Lake Report and the Advance submitted questions, and we'll present 1 media question tonight as well. So there'll be 4 questions plus a media question. In order to ensure that all the candidates have equal opportunity to answer every question, questions we received are, if we receive questions that were directed to an individual candidate, we will not be asking them unless they're restructured, and in that case we've asked for permission from the person posing the question. And questions with lengthy preambles we have modified, but for the sake of brevity you'll be happy to hear. As in 2018, no questions will be repeated between sessions. This will ensure that other candidates will not have a preview of questions and answers, and therefore an unfair advantage. For new residents in Niagara-on-the-Lake, for which I understand there's around 1,600, and those voting for the first time, a brief lesson in civics. There are 8 councillors elected at large. 8 candidates with the most votes are elected, and the councillor with the most votes acts as Deputy Lord Mayor. So you can cast your vote for up to 8 councillors, and it takes 5 total votes to pass legislation and bylaws. The meet and greet process is meant to be very simple and aimed at giving all of the candidates 25 minutes to get their message across. This is more time than at an all-candidate meeting or a debate, and more time to engage with voters than going door to door. This process, we feel, was very successful in 2018, and so we're back again with it. Each candidate will have 10 minutes to introduce themselves and their platform, and then they will be allocated 3 minutes per question. So there's 5 questions, 3 minutes each. All activities will be timed, and a reminder will be issued at the 1-minute mark, and our timekeeper this evening is Peter Howe. My husband. I had to coerce him, but he's happily here. Okay, so first of all, we have to figure out what order the candidates are going to speak. So I have Joe's hat here, and it has 4 names in it. So I'm going to ask if, could you draw a name for me? Thank you. And actually, I'm going to get you to read it. Oh, here we go.
Allan Bisback.
Okay, so Allan Bisback.
Last.
Number 1. And how about you draw a second one for me?
I do such a good
You
job.
did such a good job, absolutely.
Wendy, Cheropita.
Okay, whoops, oh, see.
Now we have to do somebody else. 'Cause that's-
All right. Now, Wendy, I can't get this order messed up, so, Penny, how would you like to draw a name for us? That's why I have.
It's
to read
upside
it.
down. It's Adriana.
Okay, Adriana. And last but not least, I'm still going to have you read this, because I want everybody to know that all 4 names are in.
It's Tim, the last one.
Tim Dutch. Okay. All right. Go, there's your hat back. Got that one. Yeah. Okay. What else do I have to tell you before you get started? So I think we're into your 10-minute presentations, and we're going to begin with Al. You can have the podium.
Thank you. I'll keep that paperclip being the budget guy. Hi folks, my name is Allan Bisback, and first I thank you for entrusting me to represent you this past term on council. Thank you to the organizers and to all the residents in attendance, and hopefully the ones that will watch later on. I've lived in Niagara-on-the-Lake for the last 15 years, and I'm married to Lori, who is, I hope here, yes, for the past 44 years. I've enjoyed learning so much about our town the past 4 years as your councillor. I've tried to listen this past term, albeit Lori would probably say otherwise, and approach issues from a practical point of view and represent all areas of Niagara-on-the-Lake. Council did establish, in my opinion, an aggressive work plan. Some would say too aggressive, but with all the right intentions to make Niagara-on-the-Lake a more livable, enjoyable place to live and do business. While we did focus on specific measures we said we would implement, we also supported major investments: fire, safety, nursery school expansion, and expanded parks. Then the pandemic hit, and I need to say it was very difficult to effect the changes that we were focused on and make decisions while ensuring core municipal services were maintained, while revenues were plunging and costs were increasing, let alone the daily direction from upper level governments. As chair of the newly created Audit and Finance Committee during this term, the budget needed to be reorientated from an investment approach more to a maintenance approach. And I think this was reflected in the levy we put through the last 2 years, which was well below inflation. The town operational fleet was frozen, and full-time staff complement was also frozen while we reoriented the budget. We also were able to maintain capital spending at the rate of $10 million per year and increase operational budgets each and every year. We made focused investments in fire, safety, and we did identify the need to manage our spending much closer and start seeking alternative additional revenue streams. I personally make no apologies for supporting the implementation of the municipal accommodation tax, which is a revenue tool used in many municipalities in Ontario. In fact, once fully implemented, the revenues will help on the current tax burden on residents in the ongoing provision of tourist services, let alone also creating a recurring revenue stream for the tourism industry. Clearly, we need to now move to a sustainable budget approach and invest in infrastructure, roads, paths, recreational services as examples. I do note that implementing a sustainable budget is a multi-year process. It will not happen in the first year of the term. However, it does not represent approving every staff request. It's about smart choices, planning, and affordability. Most of the town's costs are wages, and we are well positioned going forward, recently negotiating a fair, affordable wage increase of 2% range for employees, also below inflation. So why am I running again? I feel I can continue to contribute to some of the files that we're unable to move forward to completion. I very much enjoyed the participation in the work on the committees, the museum board, the library board, the negotiations committee, strategic plan committee, the heritage trail, and more importantly, the audit and finance committee. I personally would like to focus on 4 key areas if allowed to serve again. First, strengthen the town finances. Contrary to rumors, the reserves are in better condition than when this council started. We need to move carefully, though, towards zero-based budgeting while balancing service expectations with the expected revenue flows. The town needs to diversify the revenue streams and be less dependent on fluctuating revenues, as we saw when parking revenue plunged during the pandemic. This municipality has the same issues as other municipalities trying to fund aging assets. We need a plan, but I understand the public obligation that municipalities have in providing these services. Second, planning for the future. We need to get serious about the heritage districts and assets we are charged with protecting. This will mean seriously looking at expanding the heritage section of Old Town, documenting the assets we want to protect, designating those identified, and supporting property owners in restoration. I personally think a more involved participation of members of the Municipal Heritage Committee will help in this regard. The municipal zoning parameters related to streetscape and contextual zoning must be returned and returned now. This is all within the full control of council and is currently being worked on by staff. I would argue the tourism strategy is the main project going forward because it will inform the transportation plan and the recreation plan. We don't need to stop any of the work. However, from a strategic point of view, these 3 projects need to be aligned as it relates to what they're aspiring to. And residents need to be involved in determining that destination, not consultants that are paid by the page. A more integrated approach is required on the services we expect, and can we fund them? And my questions for the next council are, what is the real plan for the St. David's Pool? And let's once and for all get serious about fundraising. Each community should have its own meeting gathering spot. Let's get going with the plan on the waterfront. Why not connect the communities with the Heritage Trail and stop the traffic experiments in St. David's? And how do we balance maintaining residents' quality of life with supporting tourism to this premier destination? Fourth and final, growth of the Glendale build-out. We have a unique opportunity to plan and set the future in place as Glendale builds out. I feel we will allow development to take place without the required services and amenities that come forward and that residents and businesses require. Of greater concern for me is the potential financial impact of this growth area on the overall taxes of residents for Niagara-on-the-Lake. Not all growth can be sustained singularly by this one development. The next 2 years is time to sort this out. I do hope that you can see I prefer to have council to be planning more longer term, setting the roadmap, confirming the right policies, deciding, and for God's sakes, let staff manage the day-to-day. So my musings for your next council. Council needs to be more strategic, anticipate issues better, and act. We do not need to agree. However, we need to be outcome focused. Council needs to be more representative of the distinct communities making up our wonderful town. And I ask you to consider your choices seriously, as we need councillors who are collaborative. And what I mean is jointly work with each other. Independent thinkers, good listeners, not obstructive, and respectful of colleagues. And please, willing to act. I am all of those. My campaign theme continues to be expect more. I expect more of my actions every day, and you should expect much more of your representatives to sit around the council table. I would be happy to serve you for another 4 years. I will work hard, I will listen, I will be practical, and I'll base my decisions on the facts. I hope I've earned your vote. If you'd like to know more, please visit allanbisback.com. And of course, I have lots of cards with me tonight. Thank you very much for listening.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Is this on?
Yeah, you just have to. You're good. Wendy, you're good. You're good. You'll pick it up.
So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And let's try this. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the applause, and thank you to Focus Notl for giving us the opportunity to be able to meet with you today, and also for you to have a chance to get to know us better. For my 10 minutes, I'd like to focus on 3 things. I'd like to tell you a little bit more about me. I'd like to highlight some of the accomplishments that I'm proud of from the past 4 years. And I'd like to sort of start by looking forward at the things that I've identified by listening and talking to residents over the past several years in terms of what is the most important things to you, and why you might want to vote for me. So about me. I was born and raised in Niagara, and I earned a business degree with a postgrad studies in strategic planning and finance. I spent 20 years in leadership roles with the top global wine companies in roles of education, trade marketing, and strategic brand management. Then I had 6 years leading the branding and marketing for the Ontario wine industry, where we had consistent double-digit growth in sales, as well as we were successful in maximizing our funding from the provincial government, which I'll touch on why that might be important moving forward. I became a strategic planning consultant assisting small businesses to improve performance and growth. I have since retired, so if I'm fortunate enough to be your representative, I will be doing that as a full-time role. I'm a very active participant in the community and had a wonderful opportunity to sit on various boards and committees. I've been on the Public Library Board, the Pump House Arts Center, the Niagara on the Lake Fund, which is part of the Niagara Community Foundation, and we were the fastest growing fund when I was the chair in the first year. We raised over $1 million. So I'm pretty proud of that because it supported wonderful local charities in Niagara on the Lake, 38 to be specific. I was the co-chair with Allan Bisback on the Strategic Planning Committee. I've been the council representative on the Chamber of Commerce Board, and I've been on the Communities in Bloom Committee. So this has been a wonderful opportunity to learn, to collaborate, to work with residents, and to really grow and be able to offer back into our great community. So I'm proud of a few of the accomplishments. I'd like to sort of highlight 4 of them. You may not be aware, but I was the one that proposed the ambassador program. Our staff wanted to hire a couple of new bylaw officers to educate visitors about COVID protocols. And I recall the wonderful experience I had when I was at the Vancouver Olympics in 2010, where on every single corner you'd see these friendly faces with "How can I help you?" in red shirts or red jackets, and they were ambassadors. So I just brought the idea forward, and I think the chair at the time said, okay, if you want to do that, go ahead and put together a plan. So I met with Gary Burrows on a Saturday morning, and we put together a plan for that. And then we called Lori Harley and Cheryl Morris from the Shaw Guild. And they were excited, loved the idea, and they've been running with that. And it is a very successful program. Right now, it's phase 2. And Lori promises me that they're going to be presenting phase 3 shortly. So I'm very proud of that. I was a member of the Cannabis Committee, and residents told me, I don't want any more cannabis growing in our community. So like Allan mentioned, starting with the outcome is the way I operate. Start with the outcome and then build the plan to get there. So I went to the meeting saying, how do we stop cannabis from growing in this community? It was very much against what the Director of Planning was asking for. He wanted a 150-meter setback. In order to block it out, it had to be 600. So we were actually able to find an example of chicken farms that use setbacks that large. And we now have implemented a bylaw that will not allow cannabis to grow in our community. So this is preserving valuable farmland and residents' communities. As the co-chair of the Strategic Planning Committee, I took a leadership role to ensure that customer service, preservation of heritage, and the tourism strategy were all top priorities. Customer service as a marketer, we always put customer at the heart of everything. So that now, customer service excellence, has been integrated into all departments within the town. And I know we're not 100% so that in the accomplishment, but we certainly have improved in many areas. I work very collaboratively with a number of residents groups in order to address safety issues and implement stop signs and help with parking enforcement and bylaw, increased bylaw. So moving forward, what I'd like to do is, in the new council, work together collaboratively to develop a vision for our community. What do we want built and where do we want it? Because we need things like seniors residents. Residents say, where am I gonna go next? Or facilities for young families. We need to address that. So I would like to see us be able to influence development before applications come to council and change the process of what we're doing now. Number 2, I'd like to fix the planning policies. We have tools in place that we can do that. There's in our official plan, we have the community permit planning system, which we've identified as a tool. That would force developers to bring everything up front. That includes, instead of now it's done in 2 or 3 steps, even design would be up front. So you can actually look at what the designs are. And usually in the end, that's what matters the most. What is it gonna look like and how does it fit in our community? So I'd like to see expanding the heritage district and returning to contextual zoning to protect our neighborhoods from the incompatible designs that we've seen being built recently. Number 3, I'd like to give residents and council a better and stronger, more influential decision-making at the region so that we can protect from projects like what is happening in St. David's with the roundabout, where 99% of the residents don't want it, or the bullards that to me just create a safety issue. So I think that has really been something that's come to light very recently. Number 4, I'd like to prioritize the tourism strategy. I have been a proponent talking about this for 2 years, but I'm very happy to see that everyone seems to be on board with that, because that will help to guide visitation, will help us to focus on quality experiences, and also identify how much money we need in order to be able to touch on the priorities and fix the things that are we need to tackle, like congestion on Highway 55 and lack of parking. Lastly, the last one on this list is to complete the docklands, so we have a waterfront that we can all enjoy, that's safe for all of us. So lastly, I would like to say keeping taxes low, tax increases low, is so important to me, as I know it is for you. So I will be a champion for long-term financial sustainability. And I really believe that we need to identify the impact of tourism in our community on the province. The province benefits by all the tourists that come here. I believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 to $3 billion. If we knew that, we could go to the province and ask for well-needed funding to address the traffic congestion, to ask for support for bicycle lanes on all of our major streets and rural roads, because they're not safe right now. And we've had lots of accidents that have happened lately. So in closing, I would like to use my experience from the past 4 years wisely. I have listened, I have learned so much, and a vote for Wendy Cheropita will be a vote for experience, a calm voice, integrity, honesty, and hard work. Thank you very much.
Good evening, and thank you all for coming. I am Adriana Vizzari, a community-driven candidate from St. David's with a deep desire to contribute to the leadership and future of our town. My goal for the next 10 minutes is to offer greater insight into two things. Firstly, who I am and why I am running for town council, and secondly, what you can count on in a vote for me. Born and raised in Niagara, I was introduced to politics at a young age. My father was a devoted city councillor for 2 terms, which gave me first-hand insight into the impact municipal government has on the lives of its residents, and also the level of commitment required to make a difference. His time in office was back when home phone numbers were accessible to everyone, and being the eldest of 6, answering our landline was always interesting. After attending the University of Waterloo for Business and Human Resources Management, I moved to St. David's with my husband, Corey. We have family locally, but that isn't the only reason we chose to settle here. We chose it because this small town, so full of character and rich in heritage, known for its locally grown produce and wine, is incredibly special. We knew it 12 years ago, and it holds true to this day. We are so grateful to be raising our children here and to call this town our home. I spent my career to date working in a family business as well as in residential and commercial property management. I carry a broad skill set, having managed all aspects of the company's human resources and accounting needs. Through my various roles, I gained experience working collaboratively as a liaison across many stakeholders. I have strong communication and relationship building skills, both of which are vital to a role on council. While working in property management, I honed my skills in strategic planning and short and long-term goal setting. I am active in the community throughout all of Niagara-on-the-Lake. St. David's is where our children attend school and take swimming lessons. Virgil is where we grocery shop, skate, play soccer and baseball. Old Town is where we paddleboard, sail, tour friends from out of town, swim in the pool, and jump off the diving board. Queenston holds our favorite park. Glendale is where we play basketball and visit school friends. Each village is unique and wonderful in its own way, and as a whole, we have so much to offer. We are a town of tourism and agriculture and have become a place for people at every stage of life. The common thread throughout all areas is a strong sense of community. Be it at the schools or parks, you will encounter families who farm, own a small business, or work on the front lines, all enjoying the splash pad and park benches, and often sharing details about their kids' favorite spots, and also where we fall short in terms of meeting their needs. This is where I come in. I know this town well, especially when it comes to what's family-centered, and I care deeply about its future. I chose to run in this election because I want to be part of where we're going. I chose to run because I want representation for all residents. This includes St. David's, an area that continues to explode and is currently without any representation on council. It also includes young families, an equally important and currently underrepresented group. We are constantly seeing more young families in town. With all its desirability, it's no surprise that families are choosing Niagara-on-the-Lake. According to Census Canada, 41% of the town's population is under the age of 50. Projections suggest that numbers will continue to climb. In welcoming families, we welcome professionals and a workforce. This is a wonderful thing, and we need to acknowledge their growing needs through greater representation on council. I often hear and share in parents' frustration when it comes to things like accessibility of childcare, recreational facilities and programming, and even green space. You can count on me to advocate this perspective. Our town has seen and continues to see exponential growth. St. David's alone has more than tripled in size in the last decade. This growth must be carefully managed to ensure that we are preserving the heritage that makes our town so special. A formal growth strategy, one that is strong, sustainable, and balanced, that takes into account all of Niagara-on-the-Lake is essential. In balancing growth, we need to balance spending and ensure transparency and equitability in the process. Families, like all residents, want to understand where their tax dollars are going and how they're benefiting. My experience in finance and accounting will assist in advocating for you. With my extensive experience in working in small business, I understand the importance of building on our business community. Without doing so, it's difficult to see a bright future here for our children. You can count on me to advocate this perspective. As a member of council, I hope to promote resident engagement. We need greater resident involvement in decision-making. This will only help to build public trust and make our council more accountable, transparent, and collaborative. There are many different ways to go about this, and I would like to see new ways to engage residents through two-way communication, including face-to-face consultation methods and more innovative online tools. I care about the day-to-day stuff that affects your lives. It's the role of our local government to address these issues with you, and I want to help improve that process. Connecting with and being in service of people is what I love to do. It's who I am. Maybe it's an outdoor rink for your kids to skate on and get them off the storm drainage ponds, or the traffic-related challenges on your street. No matter what it is, I want to hear from you. You can count on me to be approachable and authentic. You can count on me to be highly responsive when you reach out and get you an answer. My approach in addressing any issue is always to start by listening. I will advocate my position, but remain curious and open-minded to the views of others. There are always two sides to every story, and I will do my best to be well-informed with all the information and facts, and ensure decisions are made through an equitable process that takes into account all needs and interests. Another area of critical importance to me in our town is accessibility. Our dated facilities and even some parks need some attention, as residents and tourists of all ages rely on them. Furthermore, Ontario has enacted a law that requires us to be fully accessible for people with physical, mental, and sensory disabilities by January 1st, 2025. My understanding is that we have a plan in place to meet this requirement, but there's a lot of work ahead of us. I look forward to contributing to this initiative. While I have not focused my short amount of time this evening on issues such as short-term rentals, the Glendale Secondary Plan, municipal accommodation tax, or the tourism master plan, it does not mean these aren't important to me. These matters are hot election issues for good reason, and will require and receive immediate attention when council resumes. I look forward to actively engaging in each of these matters. I hope that I have conveyed my desire and suitability for town council. With that said, and before closing, there is one remaining issue that I would like to address. In canvassing door to door, I have been asked if I have time to commit to this since I have young kids. While this question boggles my mind, I want to address it and dispel any doubt. Some candidates have full-time jobs, some have 4 kids, and some have both. There is no prerequisite that a candidate cannot have other commitments in life. Any such expectation is unrealistic and out of touch. In fact, as the saying goes, if you want something done, ask a busy person to do it. I can assure you that I have the time for this. I wouldn't waste my time, my family's, or yours if that weren't the case. You don't have to agree with what I stand for, but don't write me off because of a I am standing here because this is where I want to be. I am standing here because I love this town and I want representation for all. I am deeply committed to its well-being both today and in the future. I have the time, energy, interest, and skills to act on your behalf and contribute meaningfully as a member of council. I am Adriana Vizzari, and I ask for your vote on October 24th. Thank you.
I'm just gonna hold it. Is that okay? Okay. Good evening. I would like to start by thanking everyone for coming tonight, and to focus on OTL for putting this together, and the Royal Canadian Legion for hosting this session and all other sessions. My name is Balasiuk, and I'm here for your support on October 24th. I would like to start off by introducing myself and give you a little history of my roots within the community and why I love it so much. Having the privilege of growing up in hospitality and tourism, I have had the fortunate opportunity of being raised in a community that has seen tremendous growth in all sectors, agriculture to hospitality. My family roots in Niagara stem back to my great-grandmother Kathleen Drope of Goodman Wards, once the largest Canadian distillery of alcoholic beverages in Canada. The Drope family's Niagara-on-the-Lake property was Nina Hall, which later became the Kiley House and onto the Charles Inn. The Drope family was initially in the Grimsby area, but my grandfather, John Drope, being born and raised in Toronto, first came to Niagara to attend school. Returning to Toronto to start his career, eventually packing the family up and returning to Niagara and Niagara-on-the-Lake. Having worked myself in a number of local hotels, wineries, including the Pillar and Post, which was founded by my grandfather in the 1970s, he had a vision to convert the former canning factory to a hotel, seeing the value in future tourism growth in the community. This is in my blood. My grandfather had a passion for doing things right, and because of this, I'm interested in running for council. Not only do I feel I owe it to my family, but to my community. If I have the opportunity to have a say in the future of Niagara-on-the-Lake, I feel a strong sense to play a part in it. My grandfather was a project manager in the historic courthouse restoration in 1980 with the Niagara Foundation. Not long after he passed away, the restoration was completed and Drope Hall upstairs at the courthouse was named to honor him. I currently reside in town with my wife, Michelle, of 15 years, who I met while working at the Pillar Post, and we were married at the courthouse. She was also a lifelong resident and another lover of Niagara-on-the-Lake. We were both entrepreneurs. We own and operate Paddle Niagara, which was founded 10 years ago, a seasonal company which hosts beach cleanups, summer kids camps, and teach kids about water safety on the Niagara River and Lake Ontario, while providing access to the water for locals and tourists alike. Being an entrepreneur is hard work. It takes vision, consistency, and dedication. In 2017, I was awarded the Peter Lang Entrepreneurial Spirit Award from the Niagara-on-the-Lake Chamber of Commerce, and later that year, Business Link's 40 Under 40 Award, which I am very proud of. I love this town and feel a strong responsibility for preserving it, both in recognition of the family's role and the history, and also the desire to make it the best it can be and for future generations. Niagara-on-the-Lake is a beautiful town that has been facing some growth challenges. Each village of Niagara-on-the-Lake, Virgil, Queenston, St. David's, and Glendale, all have their own unique needs. With Glendale's exciting expansion, it is set to bring an additional 15,000 people to our community. This is a wonderful opportunity to put contextual zoning back in place, not only for Glendale, as I like to refer to it, the front door, but also the rest of our community as a whole. Old Town Niagara-on-the-Lake, being the first capital of Upper Canada, is historically and culturally significant. Consistency and proper planning for development in the Old Town will be vital for our long-term vision. We need to take the opportunity we have at council to put these policies in place to manage development throughout this town. This is not limited to Old Town, but to all of the villages. Queenston has seen some new home construction, and St. David's has witnessed significant growth with a number of families moving to the area. Virgil continues to grow with new developments and works for Concession 6 and Line 1. The Homestead area is growing. All of this will be bringing an increase in residential traffic, and that will need to be managed. Glendale's secondary plan has been submitted. but at its grassroots of the development stages. Although the density for this area is slated to be higher, there is still an opportunity to create another village to support its growing needs, much like all the other villages. There is no doubt with the growing community, our recreational needs are growing, and Niagara is alive and well, with active retirement and young families who are seeking recreational services. This is something that I'm passionate about. We need a long-term vision for a recreation plan and how it will serve the community as a whole. Our tourism industry is a lifeline. Many of our residents work in either agriculture or hospitality industries, and these industries in return rely on our visitors. We need to create a tourism strategy for responsible and viable growth to see balance for both residents and the visitors alike. We are in a pivotal position in Niagara-on-the-Lake, with so many great things happening this term at council. Last term, there were studies done, committees formed, creating headway on a number of very important issues in Niagara-on-the-Lake. We have a traffic plan to bring back to the table to work on, which gives us an awesome opportunity to incorporate the tourism strategy and the recreational plan, as all of these individual cogs in the community work collaboratively. In finishing, what I plan to bring to council is an understanding of how we got to where we are, represent the townspeople of Niagara-on-the-Lake that I know and love so well, at council with a united vision based on consistency, hard work, and dedication. My name is Tim Balasiuk. I'm community-minded at the roots, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you to all our candidates. So we're now at the questions segment, and we did receive over 50 questions from residents, so thank you to all that submitted. There won't be any questions from the floor, as you know, and we won't be announcing the name of the person who submitted the question. So how this is going to work, we started with Al, so for this next question, we'll start with Wendy and go through the sequence that way. I'd ask that you stay at the table, otherwise it's a bit like Jack in the Box, right? You only have 3 minutes. And so I will begin by reading the first question, and then it's over to you. There's been much discussion about lawsuits and their associated costs. Can you explain why we have so many lawsuits and what you will do differently to address the costs?
Thank you, Judy. That's a very good question. Yes, we have had significant lawsuits. I think we last calculated about $2.5 million. I mean, some lawsuits are absolutely fights that are worth fighting because we do need to protect this community. But I think there's one other thing that we can do that we have not done, and that's about fixing the policies. So part of my learnings through the past couple of years was we do have tools available to us to change the policies so that we can protect the things that matter most to us, like our built heritage, natural heritage features, and maintaining our streetscapes. So we can do that with contextual zoning, if we return to that. We can also, there's design guidelines. You might have read an article in the Lake Report about design guidelines that Brian Marshall wrote. And I was very intrigued by that because it wasn't a bylaw, but it was design guidelines you could create with our existing committees, frankly. And that was something that I thought was a really, really good idea. And that would allow us to, our planning staff, to actually have design guidelines that we would like builders to work within. And those design guidelines could cover things like roof styles, cladding, exterior cladding, and many other design elements, because in the end, it's always the design elements that the residents reject the most. So that would help to maintain our streetscapes. So there's that, and the community permanent planning system, as I addressed when I was speaking earlier. So those are some of the things. So to me, it's about fixing the policies, but I would not back down on fighting something that was a fight that was really worth fighting, especially to preserve one of the best top heritage properties in our community. I think most people agreed that it was a fight that we needed to actually activate. So, that's basically, I think my answer is about fixing the policies moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, so it moves on to Adriana.
I think I think it's a very broad question, and it's easy to pull into specifics, but as a broad question, I think clear guidelines and clarity in these policies is vital to going forward so that we all have an understanding of what we're speaking to. But I also think transparency in resident engagement, so we can understand better what costs are associated, so we can not be just reading maybe the newspaper or ideas coming out. Maybe we can all have a clear idea of what is happening in the town on a maybe more monthly basis or annual basis. Yes, and the clear guidelines, and that would be my answer. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So as it stands, I think the majority of townspeople know that the majority of the lawsuits that are against the town right now are for development. And echoing what other councillors were saying, we are protecting the town through these lawsuits. We are the ones that are getting sued, and we aren't suing anybody. So what I've noticed is, and what I've learned is, we used to budget about $50,000 for slips and falls and that sort of thing, and anticipating what was happening with the growth and how quickly Niagara was growing. The town budgeted $500,000 annually towards meals, and with that, we were able to manage the budget, so we didn't see an increase necessarily in the legals. So moving forward, it does come down to the policies. The developers need to know when they come to town what exactly it is the town is looking to do. The policies need to be changed. We've grown so quickly, and I don't want to say we were just a small town, but we were a small town, and the policies didn't match where we are headed to. So putting those policies in place is going to be huge. The slips and falls, they're going to happen. People continue to come. So that's my answer.
No, I need more than 2 minutes on this. Clearly, I mean, and the facts are that this council spent $2.3 million. That's an exact number as reported by the treasurer over the 4 years. I have a different perspective. I kind of put things in context of spend. And staff spend in this last 4 years about $183 million, all in. And so where I come from, 2.3 million on 183 million is acceptable if you understand that we are defending the policies and the planning parameters of this and previous councils. I find it very interesting that we have about 200 applications over the 4 years. We're fighting on 3 or 4 of them. No one ever gets worked up about the ones that do get accepted. And in this town, we have a really good developer that is not running appeals, is not in court with the town, versus a couple other developers that are always in court with the town. So why can one developer build based on the policies and the parameters and another developer can't? I'll just leave that there. I do. You have to tell me when 2 minutes is up, because. I do believe, though, we have to always change the policies and keep them updated, because things do change, expectations change, and the way we want the build-out will change, materials change. Some folks are looking for different kind of housing, so I've never suggested that it is a stable, it just sits. You always have to change it. But to tell you the truth, I'm getting a little bit irritated over developers that continue to come to this town when they know the rules, they know what they bought, they know what was approved. Thank you.
Okay, we're on to question 2. And just to give you a heads up, this is a 3-part question, so so you have to pay attention.
Oh,
It's all about tourism.
does that mean we get 6 minutes?
No, no, you're still gonna get 3.
Excuse me, could you get into the microphone?
Sorry. Sure. Do you agree that the town and residents should determine the town's strategy for tourism and be responsible for appointing the designated marketing agency? And when the MAP funds are used for marketing, the town should have the ultimate say on how the town is branded and how many visitors are invited. And we're starting this time with Adriana. Sure. Do you agree that the town and residents should determine the town's strategy for tourism, be responsible for appointing the designated marketing agency, and when MAP funds are used for marketing, that the town should have the ultimate say on how the town is branded and how many visitors are invited? We're starting with Adriana this time.
Thank you. I think that, back to what I said earlier, absolutely, resident engagement is huge, and I think that residents want to be engaged. I think we know about this town, we know what we want to see. I do believe it has to be collaborative, and I think that's the only way to build a community that we all want to live in and be part of. So I do believe community engagement or resident engagement is huge. What's the first part of the question? Do I think that we should be responsible for the marketing agency? I think we can put it to a bid as a town, and I think that that's a reasonable way to they present to the town, and I think this has been done in the past in other things. So if there's a community engagement in that, I think it's important. You're also voting for the 8 councillors and a mayor, so you're also asking us to represent the town. And I would suggest you vote for people that you think would represent your needs and your interests in this upcoming election. Because if this question ends up, you don't get community engagement, maybe you voted for the people that speak to your needs. How many visitors are invited? That's a tough one. I don't really see how that really works. I don't know if you can limit visitors, but if you can, I guess, if you have specific, we need to consider the transportation and everything getting into the town, but I think residents have to be engaged in this process, or it doesn't work. That would be my answer. Thank you.
Big question. As far as determining the DMO or who is actually going to disperse the MAP tax, we've worked with the Chamber of Commerce for years, have had a great working relationship with Tourism Niagara. So I feel like continuing that relationship is a really great course of action. As far as the approving the marketing plan, I feel like we work with the Chamber and Tourism Niagara, again, really well. So we're obviously going to have a say in how the marketing plan is put in place. And as far as the branding and who we're inviting and that sort of thing, the town is the brand. We have a beautiful community, and we have a number of historical sites, and federally, Parks Canada. These parks are open to everybody, so these people are going to continue to come. As far as who's invited and the kind of traveler that I guess we're looking for, I think it goes without question that the Shaw Festival brings a demographic of traveler that is coming and spending multiple days. The hotels that we have here, they have spas, the wineries. People are coming and they're staying a little bit longer. I want to say the average stay for the Queen Street tourist is 89 minutes, and that is a walk up and down Queen Street and an ice cream cone. The demographic of the hotel stayer, the winery visitor, they're at a 24 hours effectively, and an $1,100 spend. So I think if we're collecting this money and we're going to be using it responsibly, then obviously there is a
1 minute.
traveler we're looking for. Thank you so much.
Oh, I wanted more time. Tourism strategy, I mean, I think it's great that we're finally now the town leading the initiative. I find it interesting that I thought that we had an agency that the town had given the authority to, but I think it should be the town that leads it. Leads it is what the magic words are, not take over, but leads it. It should be all-inclusive. Everyone should be there. All the benefactors that benefit from tourism, not just the big guys. I think for too long, there's been very few large players that have benefited. So all tourist participants have to be there, and certainly residents must be involved. As far as determining the marketing strategy, as you know, we've created a governance group that would determine on the one side, the municipal side, what the money would be spent on, what kind of tourist assets would be on that. I actually think that should be done on the other side too, that the tourist participants who are marketers can determine that and present it to council, and maybe present it to residents in an open public meeting to say, does it work? I don't like the idea of what I heard on limiting or attracting certain kinds of people. We can't say red cars should come and yellow cars can't. That's divisive. But what we can do is create a marketing plan once we figure out what it is we want to be when we grow up. We can suddenly change the marketing plan to attract the right people. To attract people that want to come here and stay for 2 or 3 days, go to a shop, go to a restaurant, go to a winery, stay in the hotels. I would never want us to get to a point where we say we don't want buses, because they're going to come anyway. But we can suddenly change the marketing, and believe it or not, in the legislation, there actually is a requirement for the DMO to present to the municipality what the plan is. I don't think council has the expertise to determine what the best marketing plan is, but we certainly can ask the questions on what kind of outcome does the DMO want. I'm a big supporter of RFPing who becomes that DMO. Currently right now, it is the Chamber of Commerce. And as long as the Chamber of Commerce can respond to the outcome and the requirements and the reporting and our expectations, they can do the job. And I'm actually sure they could. But that yet has to be determined as part of the final outcome of the tourism strategy. Thank you.
So this is a very, very good question. I think this has been something that's been top on my mind for over 2 years now. So yes, I do agree with residents being involved. So I think once we do an RFP, the town, for a tourism strategy, I was involved in one in Lincoln, and it was really, really well done. And at every step along the way, there was engagement from the residents. So I would like to see at the same table the tourism industry, which is made up primarily of small businesses, with residents, all working on the tourism strategy through a facilitated process with the right consultant. And I think in that tourism strategy, then you determine what the strategy is, what the priorities are, and the action plans going forward. Then you look at how much is that going to cost, and where should the money come from? And you have 3 choices. It can come from the province, which we haven't tapped in enough to the potential of what we can get from the province with this incredible tourism impact that we have on the province from the tourism we have in Niagara Lake. That's one. The other is the MAT tax. And the other is from taxpayers. I don't want to see taxpayers paying for this. I think we have 2 great options of the MAT tax and the province. And then once you get to that stage, then that information feeds into the destination marketing organization, who's now the Chamber of Commerce, they would determine the marketing strategy based on the town tourism strategy. So it all feeds in, and that's why I was always in favor of doing a mat tax built into the tourism strategy, because you have to do the proper planning to know how much do you need, where's the money going to come from, where do you want it to go, and we should all be at the table to be able to determine that. So that's my answer, and thank you very much.
Okay, we're on to the third question of the evening from a resident. And this time, Tim will start with his answer. And this is the question. The municipal accommodation tax that was first presented to council 6 years ago is an evolving fiscal tool that passed on a 5-4 margin. Please share your vision for its use, improvement, enhancement, and/or defense.
Okay, so when the mat tax first started being discussed, I went to a few meetings, and at first I was listening to Jennings from the Shaw Festival and a few other hotel stakeholders talk about how it was going to deter tourism. It was going to end up taking a certain demographic, people with fixed incomes, that sort of thing, and it was going to change how many days they could come to Niagara and that sort of thing. Only to find out that these hotels have a $25 day resort fee. The fact that we are able to now collect money from travelers, tourists coming into Niagara at what on average works out to be about $3 per night, we have a great opportunity to collect some great revenues. And when we're talking about new revenue streams in Niagara-on-the-Lake, the mat tax finally being approved, we just have to figure out exactly that. How we're going to collect it, who's going to manage it, where the funds are going to go. And when people talk about, or the town talks about allocating the funds, we do need bike lanes in Niagara-on-the-Lake. We have active tourism, active folks in town, and it is unsafe right now as it stands. We've seen the congestion, we've seen the amount of traffic, and I think being able to create and provide a safe environment utilizing this money, I think is ideal. I don't want to say we have carte blanche and a ton of cash to throw around, but we will be able to start really building a better infrastructure for our residents and the tourists as well. It's a great opportunity.
Am I next?
You're next.
Okay, so if we take the emotion of the mat tax and just slide it to the side, because no one likes the tax. Nobody likes the tax. But when you're dealing with the province, and Councillor Cheropita made a good point about that we need to start leveraging and trying to extract more revenue from the province. When you're dealing with the province, and the province says to you, are you using all the tools that are available to you as a municipality? And you say, no, 55 other municipalities are using the mat tax and have been doing it for years, but we don't. We're a premier destination. So I don't think it's unrealistic that we would not have eventually adopted the mat tax. I'm disappointed that we're at 2, 3, and 4, because the purpose of the mat tax was to generate incremental revenue that could be used both on the municipal side for operations and on the revenue generation marketing side. So if I look going forward in the future, this is a recurring revenue stream that the DMO will have. It will be in the range of $1 million, $1.5 million they'll have from marketing. So rather than always coming, asking for money and trying to get money from upper level of government, this is a recurring revenue that they can plan towards. On the other side, on the operations side, this 50% stays with the region, it stays with the town. It's never going to the region. It stays with the town. So that's a Freudian slip. it's put into a reserve. And what the reserve means, it can only go to tourist assets. It cannot be ported off into operational budgets. So it's in a reserve, and it can only be spent. We currently spend, as best as I can ascertain, nearly $1 million on keeping our town beautiful and ready to go for our tourists. I don't begrudge doing that. I think we need to do that. But right now, that's buried into the tax rate of every single one of us. So there's an opportunity to start offsetting that over time. So I actually am optimistic as it starts rolling out, that in 2 and 3 years, we will look at that as a real benefit to both residents and to tourists. I won't comment on the rates of the hotels.
Next to Adriana.
Sorry.
Or sorry, I'm sorry.
Oh, Wendy.
Wendy.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't have my glasses
Okay.
on. Wendy.
Okay, thank you, Judy. As I started to allude to, I was never not in favor of a MAT tax, and I know that was a narrative that was started. And I'd like to tell you, as you're all sitting here listening to me, I was not against the MAT tax. What I was against the process. Because right now, there is no plan. And we have tourists that just come organically. And I would have liked to have seen a plan in place. So just wanted to clear that up, because I do agree with the MAT tax. And the MAT tax is a wonderful tool to help us to be able to fund tourism infrastructure, like bicycle lanes, for instance. But I do believe the determination of where the money will go, like Al mentioned, it will go into a fund. I really do think it should come from the tourism strategy, where you've got residents and the small business community at the same table, working together to guide the tourism visitation, to determine who do we want to have coming to this community. What is the image we want to portray? You know, is it quality or is it quantity? I'd say most people are saying to me, it's all about quality. Quality experience is what I would say. It would give us a chance to tackle the congestion on Highway 55. Why would we not look at the MAT tax or the province as potential sort of funders for parking lots, so that we can shuttle people in? Parking lots in Glendale and Virgil, to get people off of Highway 55 and shuttle people into Old Town. We have too much traffic on the streets. We have buses that go round and round through the streets, causing all kinds of congestion. So I am in favor of the MAT tax, and I look forward to the process being in place so we can determine where the residents and the business community want the money to be spent, and really to look at making sure that we're tackling the things that cause the concern for residents. I am all about quality of life, and if we can tackle some of the traffic congestion and lack of parking, I think what we're doing is adding to the quality of life through a tourism strategy, the MAT tax, and all the tools available to us to be able to fund the projects that we need to fund. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I think that obviously this is something that the next council is going to prioritize immediately, and making it a top priority, because it has come up that maybe that this money is being collected and that it needs a plan, and I understand that. And I think that it's tough to tax the tourists who feel, but I think it's important for the tourism infrastructure. I think it's important for our tax dollars. I think I did work in a town or a city for 12 years that collected a MAT tax, and a lot of it came down to educating the workforce and understanding so that they could explain to the tourists who saw it on their bills. So maybe having a clear, transparent understanding of the tax, and being able to share that with the workers, the wineries, and so that when people come, it's not a shock, and then the person who's presenting the bill, even at that level, can't even explain what it's for. And then I get that comes with work and deciding what we're gonna do with these funds. I think it's important to make that clear in the next the next 4 years, sooner than later. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Now we're at the fourth question from a resident. And this time we'll lead off with Al. So it'll be Al, Wendy, Adriana, and then back to Tim. And the topic is the roundabout in St. David's. Let me just read this. I didn't write these questions, by the way. They all came from all of you. By now, most people have heard all the pros and cons of building a roundabout for traffic control in St. David's at the main intersection, and they've formed an opinion. Other solutions do exist for managing the cross traffic, such as stoplights, a four-way stop that currently exists. For each of you in turn, what is your bottom line position regarding the proposed roundabout project for handling the ever-increasing traffic volumes through St. David's? And should the town council of Niagara-on-the-Lake have substantial input?
Can I sell my first response to someone? Thanks for the question. I can tell you that, in fact, myself and my team have just finished St. David's knocking on doors, and it's the number one item coming from residents in St. David's. They're concerned. My bottom line is I don't support the roundabout the way it's been presented. And you probably are aware that we unanimously as council are on record with 3 motions to the region essentially saying, please stop, take a breath, come talk to people. Because we do not believe it's fair that you consult with people during the pandemic. People are not going to come out and have discussions. Now, they've done the environmental assessment, they followed all the right processes, I understand that, but I have not seen data that would suggest this huge increase in volumes. And my issue isn't really the roundabout itself. It's why is the region so focused on a single project within St. David's? I'd rather see the plan. What's the plan for traffic monitoring management in St. David's as a settlement out on York Road and Con 6? It took 18 accidents to get a stop sign there, right? Maybe there should be a bypass on the trucks so the trucks don't come into St. David's. Some of the data, I'm told, I cannot confirm, was based on the fact there was a lot of trucks at a telecom company just down below the hill. That company is now since sold. So I think we need to see the data. I'm not against roundabouts. I just don't know why there's so much focus on what I'm calling the traffic experiments in St. David's. Don't get me going on the ballers, but I'll stay with the roundabout. I support roundabouts. So we have one in,
1 minute.
on Highway 55. It works well. It's by a school. Staff confirmed it worked well. I just think the process and the consultation has not been done well. I did see a roundabout at the open house at the Glendale Diverging Diamond, and that roundabout had pedestrian PXO crossings with lights, which I thought was quite interesting. And I asked the 13-year-old consultant, could that go in St. David's? And he said he didn't know. I said, well, could you talk to the regional rep? He said, no, I'm MTO, that's region, we don't talk. So there needs to be some more work done, I think. So thank you.
I agree with everything my colleague just said, and for me, when I look at all of the material that's been presented to council, it looks like there was this lens on the corner alone of 4 Mile Creek Road and York Road, rather than looking at all of St. David's in its entirety. It strikes me that it was an engineer's report, looking at from the brain of an engineer, which is a very smart brain, but if you're looking at it from one small lens, to me, that's not the way to look at it. I think it should have been looked at holistically, because perhaps a roundabout is more necessary at concession 6 and York Road, where you want to keep the traffic moving. At the corner of 4 Mile Creek Road and York Road, to me, the issues there are about safety. Like, there's a lot of people walking from different communities Cannery area, there's kids walking to school, going to St. David's Public School, so they have to cross the street. To me, a roundabout is to keep traffic moving. The issue appears more that it's a safety issue. So I think this is where we really need to have more consultation, that it can't just be about putting a lens on a traffic issue without looking at the entire community as it stands. That corner alone has beautiful shops, like that beautiful Bloom & Co. and a great restaurant. We've got people crossing all the time, some people in wheelchairs and walkers. Like, we need to have a safe environment, and I don't think that a roundabout is safe. I talk to people that live on Concession 6, you know, when we come out of Concession 6 coming from the north side. They're afraid to actually drive their cars onto the roundabout because cars are moving so quickly. They're afraid of being hit. Can you imagine crossing that street then, if that's the way the roundabout would be in St. David's? I think it's just looking at it from the wrong perspective. I think that the region needs to look at things in a holistic way and look at what the issues are and recognized by the residents themselves, because they usually know. So that's how I'm looking at this. I want to preserve the heritage features in that area, the new shops that are being built, and create a safe environment for the public. And I don't think this is the answer. So for me, we got to take a pause. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. So the roundabout is obviously probably one of the two biggest issues in St. David's. I feel very strongly, I think it's really important that 4 years ago when there was an election, it wasn't even on people's radar. It wasn't even barely a topic. And I'm just really grateful that we're here now talking about St. David's and putting it on as one of the 5 questions. So we've come very far. I think that the roundabout does move traffic, and I think if that is the sole purpose of it, sure, it makes sense. The problem is we don't want the center of our town, just traffic to move through it. We want a town center, we want to be a village, we want walkability, we want shops, we want what all of our towns should have. Old Town, Virgil, Queenston, Glendale, St. David's, we want our village. I cross the 4-way stop 4 times a day to walk my kids to and from school. A solution needs to be had. It's not okay how it is. We can't leave it how it is. It is busy, and it needs to be addressed, but I think definitely having engagement from the town, and also re-looking at the data, because the data is old that determined the roundabout, and we have new numbers, we have new data. Mewburn Road is open now. There is development that's happening, it's going to continue to happen. We don't want to be a throughway from Old Town to Niagara Falls. We want people to stop, and we are a community there. And I think that the roundabout is not the solution for us. So I'm really glad that the question is being asked and that we are talking about it, because that's step 1 in finding a solution. So thank you.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything that they said. Only because I've had the same experiences. Everyone that I talk to in St. David's, they say that they don't want it. It is a small town, and they are trying to, a village, and they want the village feel. Moving traffic through consistently the way that a roundabout does. I don't know if it's conducive with the area. I know that the families walking from Cannery Park to St. David's Public School, they are extremely worried about the safety of it. And as far as the data goes, Newburn Bridge wasn't open yet. And if the town is able to make the improvements to Concession 6, they are talking with the region about the region taking over Concession 6. I do believe that a roundabout would have been better suited at Concession 6 than a 4-way stop. With that being said, I feel like the data is old. Concession 6 is a much more viable access or roadway, and as I said, I want to be the voice of the townspeople at council, and so far the people are saying they don't want the roundabout.
Okay, well, we're at our last question, and this is a question from the Lake Report. And the order for this question, we'll start with Wendy, Adriana, Tim, and then Al, okay? So, do you think short-term rental businesses should continue to receive special treatment versus the hotel businesses? Or should they be made to collect and pay the same taxes?
Can you repeat the question again, please?
Sure. Do you think short-term rental businesses should continue to receive special treatment versus the hotel businesses? Or should they be made to collect and pay the same taxes?
Another very good question, Judy. So, again, going back to what I would have preferred to see was a plan in place for the nat tax. Because we don't know if we need 2%. We don't know if we need 4%. We don't know if we needed hotels only, or whether we should have all of the tourism industry collecting it. I think those are really important details to know. Because that then would determine who do we need to tax, and how much do we need to collect from them. I think the B&Bs are already prepared, knowing fully well that now that the implementation of the MAP tax has started, and it is for hotel accommodations and cottage rentals with 4 rooms or more, I believe is the cutoff. The other B&Bs are all getting ready for it. So they're starting to look at it, and frankly, they'll have a head start at least in terms of figuring out how they're going to implement it into their own business. I'm not against that at all, and I don't think most B&Bs are, because it might be better to have a level playing field. And if we're going to be using this tool, then let's maximize it so we can actually fund the tourism industry, the tourism infrastructure to the greatest available opportunities. So I would say yes, I'm okay with it, and I think we should have done it through a plan so that we knew how much we needed and what percentage and who should be involved. Now that we've started it, I would say let's get on to the tourism strategy as quickly as possible so we can actually determine what the action plans are, how much it's going to cost, and how much do we need to collect from the MAP tax. Thank you.
I think that the tourism strategy needs to be done immediately going forward in the next, with the next council, and a plan for the short-term rentals is being discussed immediately as well. I don't see a problem if they are part of this tourism strategy, putting the MAT tax to them, but I understand things take time to develop, and I don't feel we're going there, we're getting there. We're gonna have a new council in place that's gonna make these decisions quickly, because it seems to be a group of people that wanna take action. So I do think it's getting there. I think, again, we engage the community, and a lot of the groundwork has been laid for these things, so it's just a matter of putting them into place. Thank you.
So, with the number of STRs in Niagara Lake, I feel like they should pay the MAT tax as well. What we've come out of with the pandemic, a lot of people would say, the MAT tax got forced through. The fact of the matter is that people have been working on it for years. It needed to be implemented. There's no reason why the taxpayers should be paying for the infrastructure for tourism in Niagara Lake any longer. With that being said, I think it's a step program. So yes, the hotels are charging the MAT tax. I think eventually we will get to the short-term rentals as well. And that is accommodations in Niagara Lake. We are a tourism destination, and the MAT tax is designed for that. So yes, STRs should pay the MAT tax. We'll get there.
comment that, I mean, we need to be careful in managing expectations. The tourism strategy, it will not fix everything. And it's about a year away, folks, so it's not in the next 3 months. It's gonna take a year to put the strategy together if you wanna have people included and consulted in a proper way. The two things, in regards to special treatment between hotels and short-term rentals. We had a strategy why we picked 5 rooms, because during the pandemic, the hotels, not all the time, but they could still operate. Some of them were still operating during the pandemic. But short-term accommodations were closed. So we made a decision at the time to say, let's put it in 5 rooms and above, and let the short-term accommodators recover through the pandemic. I had folks call me that they had to send back huge deposits to people that had deposited for the previous year. So there was a strategy to actually stage it that way. And if the question is about special treatment from a commercial rate point of view, if you are identified as a short-term rental, specifically a bed and breakfast, MPAC picks that up, and you actually get a little bit of a surcharge based on your assessment. So I would argue bed and breakfasts now, based on the assessment, are paying a little bit more than typical residential. I've been out of the business for 10 years. I figured it was about an 8% surcharge at the time, but my numbers could be a little bit off. But we need to be very careful on going down the road of making short-term accommodators commercial operators, because once you switch a residential lot to commercial, you can't bring it back, and then you have commercial growth all over the place. I think the focus should be on hosted versus non-hosted. And I really implore people to focus that hosted, which are B&Bs, people that live, they are our residents, our friends, they live in the community. They are the concierge. They offer a much different experience than hotels. It's not a better experience, it's a different experience. And they run their operations, they have great property standards. The issues is in the non-hosted. And we need to use licensing and enforcement to bring that into a desired outcome. That's where I think we should be focusing, not trying to punitively eliminate people and say, you can be in this town and you can't be in this town. I don't think that's the way to go. I think we can use some enforcement processes to do that. So I actually think that we should be very proud of the fact we have a couple hundred bed and breakfasts that represent this town to the degree they should, but we do have some work to be done on what I call non-hosted, regardless of the platform they use for booking. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank our 4 candidates tonight. I think it's been very interesting, your answers to questions and your platform, so thank you so much. Thank you all of you for attending. There are a couple of baskets at the back if you can throw a little in for the Legion. That would be great. Money does go to the Legion. And thanks again. And we're back here next Tuesday. Is it Tuesday? Wednesday. Sorry, next Wednesday for the Regional Council meet and greet.